Welcome to Engineering Success Podcast. Today we are talking about team health and engineering leadership with Brad Taylor. He is the former CTO of NERSA, has also worked with health tech and climate tech companies. Now over to our host, Daniel.
You're at NERSA. Can you tell me a little bit about what you did?
Yeah, actually, maybe I can to give you the background. I just left NERSA, so now I'm kind of on my own. But yeah, I'm a consultant and advisor for a number of health tech and climate tech companies. I had a great background in a variety of amazing organizations like NERSA and Galileo Health. I helped early stage at Marqeta and helped grow them to IPO in fintech, and in general work with great teams that build great products, and we love helping engineers build great products for customers.
Yeah. So I was seeing that you started out as a sysadmin on your, at least your LinkedIn profile. So what made you want to transition into leadership roles?
Yeah, what I realized is I really wanted to be where the conversations were happening and not just a person who took tickets from the product team. I wanted to understand the business metrics behind why we're building a certain thing, wanted to understand what the customer experience was. And so early on, I was able to get a role as a lead engineer working in health tech. I actually got lucky to work directly with some nurses in a hospital down in Century City and actually see their experience day to day. And what I love about that is connecting the work that I was doing in engineering to how customers were having their lives improved or how their workflows were better, how they build better products. And then when I realized that I could do that and I could actually do it with whole teams and then multiple teams and for the entire organization, I really got a lot of joy in seeing that impact more broadly.
Okay. So what skills do you think it takes for an engineer to be able to get a seat at the table with being able to lead and make decisions and influence decisions for a company?
As a leader, your core skill is being a translator and a communicator, right? So you are trying to help those engineers that you work with translate that work to the way the business interacts and the way the customer interacts. So being able to speak the language of the business, the metrics that are critical, how the customer experiences it, how the go-to-market strategy works, understanding all of that and being able to translate that down to engineering is critical. I think the second thing is being a great partner, an attitude of let me help you with what you need to get done, let me help the business be successful, and then that customer orientation. So doing what you can to make sure that customer is really happy. I think those are really the critical bits of being at that table and earning that place.
And did you find anything difficult about that transition when you went from being just a regular engineer to a leadership position? Did you find any challenges and how did you deal with those?
Yeah, oftentimes the hardest thing is trying to understand what level someone understands the technology side of the world. So you obviously don't want to give them all the nitty gritty. You want to give them the understanding and perspective that helps them understand why a certain thing is complicated or how the way the business functions impacts engineering, but with the level of detail that's appropriate. I think to me, it was really starting with a partnership mindset of let me understand where you're at today. And now I can help you understand the gap between where you're at and where we need to be. And so that's probably the most challenging thing is understanding that altitude. And then for myself, understanding their side of the business. So for example, when I work with revenue leaders, go to market, understanding that kind of to a level of being dangerous or having a good conversation has been critical. And so I really pour myself into things like finance and go to market and customer support, understand those skill sets well, so I can at least have a conversation with those leaders, understand how my work impacts theirs.
Right. That's important in any operation is understanding what you're doing is how it's going to impact the people in frontline, because even where I work, right, as a systems engineer, things I do have to get told to the service desk so the service desk can support the users as they call in.
Exactly right.
What do you do to make sure that engineers are spending their time appropriately and on the correct things?
It starts with the core business metrics. So what should engineering be moving in the business to see impact externally? Because ultimately engineering there is a service to drive the business forward. So let's align with the business, often with the executive team, with the CEO, with go-to-market and other places. What are the critical things we need to move? And then from there, how can engineering move that? So oftentimes that's partnership with product. What are the things we're building? What are the features we need to add? What's the kind of objectives in terms of the quality of software we're building, uptime, et cetera? And then we translate that into the engineers and the work that they do every single day to contribute to those goals. Both there's the work that's top down, how do we get teams to work on the right things, but also the bottoms up, how do we get those teams to be interested in doing those things themselves? I think those two bits of alignment are really critical. It's not just that engineers should take tickets off of a Jira board, but they should be interested in participating in projects that move the business forward.
So then that's the question, right? How do you get them motivated to be basically driving the business forward and involved in that decision, right?
Yeah, I think when they can see their direct impact, whether it's connecting them with a customer via, hey, we're going to do a screen recording of a customer using the product or using a new feature, or having a stakeholder join the all hands to see how our product is used out in the world. I think second is hiring people who actually care about our customers. And oftentimes you're lucky in a business. For example, when I was at Whistle making GPS trackers for dogs and cats, almost everyone on the team had a dog or a cat and could understand how that product worked and how their bit of contribution contributed to the greater whole. In other businesses, it's more challenging. When I've got, let's say, a doctor who is a customer and an engineer is obviously not a doctor, how do they understand how that doctor gets their job done? I think getting them connected on a regular basis is really critical. Something we did at Galileo Health is we had regular shadow sessions where doctors would actually have a chance to jump on a Zoom call with an engineer, and they would show them the workflow that they were doing, and the engineer could really see how that work was done. And oftentimes out of those sessions, we got bugs or really fixes put in the code base immediately, because someone would see, oh, this little button being the wrong color or in the wrong place actually make it harder for you to do your job. I want to help you with that.
So what do you do when there's a mistake made in like technology choice, right? You went down one path because you thought it was the right path, and then eventually you find out it's actually causing more problems than what you really should.
This is super common as a problem. And in fact, sometimes this is just we built for a certain set of scale, and then we have more scale. And the tools that we had picked for a certain scale doesn't really scale anymore. And so it needs to be part of the regular process, right? You need to build the muscle of being able to evaluate new technology choices on a regular basis, understand whether they're fit for where we are today and what that future looks like. And so having a good partnership with product and go-to-market to understand what does growth look like in the next 6 months to a year, to use that in your evaluation criteria. And then ultimately building in, okay, how much effort is going to take us to go retarget to a new platform or a new implementation? What are the requirements of that, and going off and doing it? But it's something you have to keep as a regular bit of business. So let's say over a year, maybe you're spending 10, 20% of work on replatforming efforts that really move towards features. What I'll say through my experience is one of the most challenging bits is how do you sell that back to the organization? Because essentially you're saying, I need to take time out of the backlog, take time away from building new features for customers to go platform to something new. And the way that I always try to phrase it is, it's not tech debt. It's really that we have a new set of scale. And that set of scale is actually a feature that we need to build as something that's part of our new development. And so having good muscle around estimating where we're at today and what growth looks like and what we need to scale that growth is really critical there.
What signals do you use to manage your engineering teams effectively? Like looking for burnout, looking for where people need to support, those type of things.
Yeah, I think two ways. We do quarterly surveys. That's a really critical bit to look at the broader engineering team. How's everyone overall feeling? But that can also be hard to get real detail. And sometimes people will give survey results that are not actually true. They'll think that they're going to get called out for giving a negative survey result. So then it's also in building the environment so that I have one-on-ones with a lot of engineers. I understand how they're feeling, setting in a deep way, what's going on with the team. Of course, you can always use kind of DORA metrics as well as SPACE, a lot of different frameworks that are out there to help you with that. But ultimately, nothing really replaces that one-on-one communication. And I really try to bring in those conversations an open attitude, a very earnest conversation. I will share things that I'm working on or that I'm frustrated about, worried about, and ask for their help with that, as well as ask for them to open up to me. What's going on? How can we be better? And ultimately, through all of that, combined with a proper post-mortem process, we can build the muscle of getting better over time. And if folks see things getting better, they're more willing to provide feedback candidly because they know that feedback is being addressed. If you're not doing that work to improve things over time, the team will say, well, why should I give you my honest opinion? Because you're just going to throw it away and ignore me.
Yeah, I can relate to that survey issue because where we're at work, they say it's anonymous, but they send you a link. You click the link and it says, welcome, Daniel Morgan. And it's just, oh, click the link, which means who's writing this, which makes it not really anonymous.
Yeah, and there are great tools like Culture Amp does, I think, a pretty decent job of trying to anonymize it, make it hard for people to actually look at who responded. But ultimately it's not a space where people feel safe to provide their honest opinion. And I think that's really where I really look to my managers and myself to build a good relationship with their team, to understand what's really going on, what's the health of the team. A good manager and a good team lead will understand things are off before a metric will flag or a stat will change. They'll know the team is being less productive or frustrated by something, or they'll know they're not feeling safe to communicate. And so I think that's really an important part of the manager job. It's not just making sure that we've got the right tickets in the backlog, making sure product's happy. It's also really understanding the health of that team. And I think it's something that we really downplay, that kind of soft skills, that EQ aspect of being a manager.
Yeah. So then that goes on to the question, how do you know you've built the right team? And what do you look for to build the right team?
Yeah, I think it starts off with hiring really well. And so for me, I look for folks who are really focused on their growth. And maybe they're at an inflection point of their career where they're maybe about to get promoted to the next level. They're striving for more. And then you build a culture that fosters that kind of learning mindset by having a variety of experience levels in the team. So it's not just a team full of seniors, it's a team that includes junior engineers and principal engineers and has everyone with a mentor. So we're all finding growth in that. There, you align everyone to what the business goal is for the team. And so they understand fundamentally what moves the business and how they can make impact, and then how the customer is doing. So all of that together ends up with a team that, generally speaking, is excited to work together because they're all at a place of growth in their career. They're all they understand how their work aligns to the business, how customers see positive impact from that. And then you get out of their way. A good team should be, self-functional and driving, and shouldn't need a lot of micromanagement. And so that's typically how I like to run. I've been criticized in the past for not being as hands-on as needed. And I'll be hands-on when it comes to building that team, making sure it's successful. But ultimately, a good team should be able to take off on their own. And then I can highlight the proud moments for the team. They launched a thing that was really important to us. They made the right pivot when they realized that the choice that they chose initially wasn't the right one, et cetera, and be their cheerleader in the best way.
And so then that's the other question. Then how, like in the wake of COVID, we all went from this on-site mentality to either a remote or hybrid mentality. How do you effectively make sure those individuals are being managed appropriately in that type of environment?
Yeah, I think it's regular touch bases. I think your usual daily stand-up and your sprint planning meetings are really critical, but also having regular one-on-ones. Many managers I talk to don't have a regular practice of one-on-ones with their team. And the one-on-ones that I try to lead really start with what's going on in your world, how can I assist you? And they're less about me providing an agenda and more about the person providing their own agenda and how we frame the conversation. I think hybrid is hard. So the in-office and remote environment can be challenging to work. And so I like to treat hybrid in a pure remote sense, as in if you're in the office and you're joining a meeting, ideally you're joining on your own laptop so we can see your face, versus in a broader room where there's 4 or 5 people and it's hard to see everyone's expressions. Using async documents as a way for us to communicate. So rather than have a giant meeting, we have a document that we're able to collaborate on and bring our input into. And that way brings everyone who's on the same time zone, or everyone's at different time zones, to align on the same document. And ultimately, in that way, with the right goals and alignment, teams tend to be successful.
Yeah, I find with the remote, right, we're like, for where I work, we're scattered across the United States. So it almost seems like somebody's start time's not necessarily when my start time is, and it's about finding time to overlap and being able to collaborate on things, especially when I work cross teams, because sometimes I'm working with networking or sometimes I'm working with security for specific things I'm implementing.
Yeah, for sure.
So how do you balance driving performance for the company versus maintaining a healthy culture?
This is definitely a very challenging question. I've gone in different modes in my career. What I've realized that basically you can never sacrifice the team health. So team health comes first. A healthy team will give you the productivity and the velocity that you want. And when you sacrifice that to focus on velocity, quantity of features delivered, whatever the customer needs, then essentially the code turns out bad. You build a bunch of tech debt you have to pay down later. And ultimately, while you check the box to achieve the thing the customer wanted, you have to go back and redo that work anyway. And so I come back to a metaphor around gardening, right? When you build a garden, you've got to lay the proper soil, you've got to water it regularly, make sure it gets enough sun, and the plant will grow. And so that team health, to me, you start there and understand how that, and then align the team with what the business outcome is. So I talked about goals before, but hey, if a customer needs a certain thing by a certain time, having them understand that goal is really important. And I want them to sign up for it voluntarily. Because they care about that customer, they'll want to ship a thing by a certain amount of time. Then ultimately, if that date is really critical, then we're going to compress scope to keep the team healthy. I think generally speaking, when I've done sprints of 80 plus hours a week, that can last maybe a week before the team starts doing really bad work. And in general, we don't want to get there. So let's not plan that for that. If we end up smashed against the deadline and we've got to get it done, okay, fine. Obviously, startups are hard and sometimes you got to work hard for them. But making that a regular practice is detrimental to the long-term health of the code base. And ultimately, if that code base isn't healthy, customer's not happy in the long term.
So what surprised you, or what did you wish you knew about your last role transition from, say, dev to manager?
Yeah, I think with my last transition, so it was a VP role to a CTO role. So going into an executive team. So I can speak to that particularly, and I can jump back also to that kind of manager for my C as well. I think the challenging thing with going to a CTO now is I can focus on my area and make sure tech is successful, but now I also am an owner for the broader business. So how do I help product and go to market also be successful in that way? Not just with tech enablement, but also are we thinking about the right strategy the right way? So really being a strategic partner and having to understand the broader business more deeply. So as an engineer, I could understand maybe what the customer needed, understand what that feature was, but now I got to understand the broader market and I get to understand the economics of all of it. So that was an interesting bit of transition. I love that aspect of it because I'm a continual learner. I'm very thirsty for knowledge and for experience. And so that was really fun, but it's a bit different than where I was before.
So now we're in the age of AI, right? And it seems like everyone wants to try to integrate it in some way, but still protect their intellectual property, right? So how do you balance that as a leader to make those decisions of what is allowed and what isn't allowed when using AI?
Yeah, it's a great question. Unfortunately, what we're realizing basically is when you throw all your data into an AI system, it's likely to be there for a long time. And so you better throw the right bits of data there. So I think data privacy and data governance are really important when it comes to AI, but also come down into ultimately, this is just another tool in our tool belt to meet customer expectations. We shouldn't look at AI as just as the feature. The feature is how do I make that customer's life better? How do I make more money for the company, however I do it? And so ultimately then starting with that as the lens, how do you experiment with AI to use that as a tool? And so I've seen it been successful. I'll talk about Galileo Health for a bit. We use it as a way to speed up charting. So you have doctors charting, they're talking about how that patient is doing, how the interaction of that patient was, and we're able to use it as a way to actually make charting more quick. Ultimately, the customer experience was now I get to spend more time with my doctor. He's not typing on the screen as much. This is a great outcome, but it really started with experiments, small scale, medium scale, and then large scale, and then the full rollout, which really was very impactful. And we did a lot of work with some AI providers at that time to make sure the privacy of our customers were paramount. We were a segregated area because, as said, once that goes into a larger AI model, maybe it never comes out and maybe it's there forever.
Yeah, because I would assume like with an AI model, depending on what data you're training for, especially in healthcare, right? You've got the issues of HIPAA.
That's right. So it's even more important in healthcare to make sure that we protect our data privacy of our patients, that we're not sending information that is inappropriate or is private. And so we shouldn't be trading on that data either. So it's a really important bit. And ultimately for us, we were able to use some open data sources that were pre-scrubbed in our early tests to make sure that it worked. And then once we validated that it worked, then we're able to really grow and expand that over time.
Okay. That's about it. All I had were for questions.
Awesome.
Let me see if I can think of a few more. Okay, so you've obviously worked on different products because you worked in healthcare and you said you were doing a GPS for cats. Out of all the projects you worked on, what one was your favorite and why?
Oh man, I think Shaper Tools is my most fun experience. I had just exited Whistle. We were lucky to sell it to Mars Pet and see that business thrive after that. I joined Shaper Tools pretty early on, and they were making a computer vision powered woodworking tool. Basically, a computer, a CNC, which is a computer controlled router,
Yep.
but in a handheld size. And that was really a return to being an IC. So at Whistle, I had a team, I had multiple managers, we had a lot of growth. While I was VP of software at Shaper, our team was much smaller. It was a team of 12. So I had no eng managers. I was managing the team myself and also doing a lot of the UI. And I just loved getting back to a place where I could actually write some code and see the outcome directly. And so I built a lot of the UI for the tool and got to go down in our wood shop and make projects with it all the time. It was really enjoyable in that way. While I do love managing large teams and seeing big impact, every so often you get to a place where you're like, man, to get something done, I got to have 17 meetings. I really would have loved just to be able to write a line of code and see it get done. So my call out to those IC engineers out there, enjoy it while you can. It's so lovely to be able to write code, ship it to production, and see impact within a very short time horizon. When you become a leader, that time horizon becomes a lot broader. And the impact is really, the impact that I love is when I see someone grow in their career. And that, let's face it, that's a 6 to 12 month kind of time horizon to see satisfaction. So it's a bit different.
Yeah. And so I had another question on my head.
All good.
But yeah, no, I think I'll go ahead and wrap it up there. And I appreciate your time and thank you for being on the podcast.
This was great. Really happy to be here.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That's all for today on the Engineering Success Podcast. Thank you so much for being with us. Stay tuned for more.